Happy
Happy
New
New Year.
Year.
Here we
It's
are.
it's 2021 somehow. We made it.
Mostly, yeah. A percentage of us made it.
Oh, that's not funny.
Yeah, I was
No, I
like,
mean a
that maybe
percentage
took a.
of like individuals. Obviously, a percentage of the population also made it. And that's a little darker than I was
Yeah,
thinking.
it's like that went a little dark accidentally.
Well, today is a momentous occasion, not only because we are coming to you live January 4th, 2021, which is the new year, but also because I have broken my 9-month cocktail hour sobriety run, and have made myself a margarita, which I am now
Whoop,
drinking,
whoop.
even though it is only 2 p.m. West Coast time.
You deserve it.
And thank you, I agree. And if you needed sort of like if there's no better representation for the kind of weekend I had than the fact that I am now I have wet hair and a margarita in my hands. So delighted to be here. Delighted to be here with Jessie and Jeremy. What are you drinking today?
Uh,
Jesse, you first.
sure. I have a hot chocolate because this has been my running thing, but so I would make sure that I wouldn't abandon Claire. I put a little bit of Bailey's in there. So it's very nice and cozy.
Good job. Bailey's is a good choice.
Yeah.
It was. Yeah, it's been good. I haven't had it in a while.
I will
was like-
say, I am drinking maple espresso iced tea. It's from Trader
Interesting.
Joe's, so it's good.
Tea.
But I did pregame a little bit with some Angel's Envy bourbon. It's one of my favorite bourbons. It's finished in port barrels, and it's good. It's like raisiny.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it was good.
Do you just drink it straight? Do you put ice in it?
I had this one. I normally like. I will either have it straight or I'll have it with a little bit of water or ice, sort of depending on what I'm after. This one I actually had with some coffee, and it was delicious.
That sounds good.
If there's a maple flavor, then I can see that tasting really good.
Yeah, so, here we are.
Sounds yummy.
Oh no, the maple is your tea. Wow, you just have
Yeah,
so
the
many
maple is the
flavors
tea.
going.
I could also see it going well in the tea.
Yeah.
Yeah, I might try that coffee and maple espresso tea tomorrow. We'll see how that goes. It's tasty.
So thematically, this week we're talking about hangovers. Jeremy picked the topic back in December, and I feel like he was like omniscient, like just wonderful job predicting the future. Because that is exactly the right thing to talk about. There is a kind of psychological hangover that I think always comes after the holidays. The blitz that is Christmas, if you celebrate it, or just any of the December holidays, and all that entails with like the end of a semester, the end of a year, then New Year's Eve, New Year's Day, and of course 2020 was a particularly gnarly year to say goodbye to. And so here we are on January 4th, and I feel hungover. I'm not, but I feel it. So we're going to talk about the literal and figurative kinds of hangovers and how we treat them. So either of you get literally like drunkenly hungover during the holidays?
I did not get literally drunkenly hungover, although I feel like I took in a lot of chemicals.
Mm-hmm.
But like not to the point of hangover. I did sleep a lot, but I think it was hangover from like semester and like being on 10 for most of the last year.
Mm-hmm.
And so like there were several days in a row where I was like, I'm going to wake up at late for me is like 8 o'clock. So I, like slept in and I also took a nap and also went to bed at like 9:15 p.m.
Mm-hmm.
I had several days like that for sure.
Yeah.
What about you all?
My experience, I think, was very similar to Jeremy's. I really actually like scaled down my drinking a lot this holiday season, which was interesting, but I think it helped my sleep for one thing. So if you are missing your sleep, try cutting out alcohol. that might help. But yeah, I took a lot of naps. So it was very much like I was hungover because I did a lot of laying around on the couch and eating terrible things to make myself feel better that didn't actually make me feel better, and watched a lot of TV, a lot of Netflix, a lot of superhero movie marathons, which was kind of good.
That's fantastic. You deserved it.
I needed it, I think.
Yeah.
I think anytime your body just like falls asleep every 10 minutes while you're laying on the couch, clearly you need to listen to that.
No kidding.
Yes.
Yeah. No, I also didn't get the drunk version of hungover because I don't think there was a single day when I drank that much. I drank pretty consistently, but I was with my family and we just tend to drink a lot of really good wine around the holidays because my dad's birthday is December 24th. It's Christmas Eve.
Mm.
So we have the birthday, the Christmas, and the New Year's. And my mom worked in the wine business, so we just have really good wine at our house. But it's the kind of wine that you like savor. So I never consumed enough in a short enough amount of time to actually get hungover. But I certainly felt, as Jessie and Jeremy have said, like lethargic enough. It's like I was like performing a hangover because my body was so tired. But that is only one of the many ways that you can be hungover. We're sort of speaking to a work related hangover or a chaos of life hangover. Bless you. But there's another kind that's a little bit more fun, which we might call a show hangover, which is after a production closes, when you have spent God knows how many hours in a 3 to 6 week time span with the same group of people day in, day out. And then you've performed the show however many times for live audiences, and the show has lived in your body and your soul and your voice for so long. And the rhythm of rehearsing it and then performing it is like in your bones, and then it ends. Then you have closing night and it ends. And the next day, it is very common for people in the theater field, not just the actors, but anyone who worked on the show, to feel like emotionally hungover. For me at least, I always feel really tired. I feel really sad. I often cry. I often nap, and I'm not a napper, but I'll just like fall asleep because my body is like releasing so much tension and anxiety. The good kind, the kind that like jazzes us as artists, but like there's a relinquishing of all of that and a relinquishing of the adrenaline. And that show hangover, it's really interesting because I actually I've had a few in 2020, and I have some more coming up. And as unpleasant as it can be to experience, it was kind of a gift in last year to realize the day after we like wrapped recording or did our final Zoom performance that I actually felt that same sense of immediate nostalgia and kind of grief for the loss of the thing and the loss of the time with those people. And so I'm curious, like, do either of you have experience with show hangovers? And if so, how does it manifest and what do you do about it?
I have that experience. It's sort of, for me, I think it's probably an addiction. And the hangover I would call a kind of withdrawal. And it comes as a couple of things. The addicting part, the shows are addicting, but also the feeling of, I think this is unique to theater and arts people. I don't know. Maybe events people too, like sports folks. But like when you're done with a season or a show, my feeling is great relief, like you described. And for the next week or two, or however long it is, sometimes it's 2 nights, sometimes it's 2 months. But what I experience is a lot of freedom. It's a feeling of freedom. It's a feeling of lots of time.
Yeah.
And because you've like artificially constricted your schedule so much. You've turned over, I mean, anywhere from maybe 15 hours a week to 40 or 60 hours a week for 2, 3, 4, 6 weeks. And then the time is given back to you.
Mm-hmm.
And it makes me really appreciative of time, period. Like having time,
being
able to spend it, then being able to spend it how I want to spend it,
Right.
that kind of thing. And it definitely engages the serotonin faucet for me. And so that feeling of like I've been constricted this whole time and now I'm not constricted is a really addicting feeling, and it's sort of perverse that like the way to get that addicting feeling is to constrict your schedule for 4 or 5 or 6 weeks so you can get the feeling again. But that's really how it works for theater people to some degree. So that's my story. And then there are some shows which I think are special. I learned a long time ago that not every show can be, but there are some shows that like do cut through and like hit you as a human and not just a robot. And those invoke the sort of melancholy that you're describing, I think.
Yeah. It's an interesting paradox that you're describing about the way that you find that appreciation and relaxation is by committing to projects like theater that suck up time and constrict your schedule, which is very true. I thrive on structure, though. Mm-hmm. So for me, it's actually it's less relaxing. It's less relieving to be done with a show, because I immediately crave knowing where I'm going to be, knowing what I'm going to be doing, having like a rhythm, even if that rhythm is not conducive to good mental or physical health. I still miss it. And the idea of having so much time or a schedule that's so open, like that actually stresses me out. Which is, it's still an important thing to hit, to circle back to have 2 to 3 week stints every now and again where you really do have that open schedule. Like that's important. And there's a lot of good reflection that can happen in that time. There's a lot of good, like, healthsome things you can do, like exercise and eat well and sleep more normal hours. And that's important. Like it's if we made theater 24/7 or whatever, 27, which a lot of theater artists do, but if we did that every day of the calendar year, we would actually implode. Like there would be little bits of theater artists just like scattered around. So it's important to have those like leapfrog projects where in between you can recover. But I find that I struggle more in the interims.
Yeah, I can kind of see I'm kind of probably somewhere squarely in the middle of that because I really do love the structure. And I think that was really important when we were doing Midsummer back last March-ish, spring, whenever, last COVID. And, everybody's schedules were absolutely wrecked. And I was working from home, and I went from working 40 hours a week to working 8 hours a week to working 24 hours a week. Yeah. And just having all this empty time to fill then, this gave me at least something that was consistent during my day and to look forward to. But definitely also feeling you on that not every play is nostalgic bit, Jeremy. I mean, that was very much me when I first started doing theater, like in middle school, high school. Every show we would all like just bawl at the end of the performance because, we're like, oh my gosh, I don't know the next time I'm going to see you again. And the next time we're going to be in a cast together again. And I think there's been something more freeing as an adult doing this as like a hobby more than anything else. Is I do get to more or less make more of a choice of when I'm in the room or the Zoom with these people again. Yeah. So that's kind of a nice thing where it's not a goodbye. It's I'll see you next time. And so next time doesn't feel as far away. But I don't know if either of you have this, but when my like biggest hangover symptom, especially like as I've gotten older is the minute like the show ends, I get super sick. Like I come down with like the worst post-show flu thing ever. And this first started in high school when I finished Seussical, and it was like a 4-month intensive, and I was the Cat in the Hat, and I was working building sets and stuff as well as being in it.
Oh God.
And I was just so sick afterwards. Mm-hmm. And then it continued to happen when I was a teacher, except I think now it hits a little bit too early, and it hits like the week of the show.
Oh God.
So I'm sick during the show, either whether I'm directing it or whether I'm in it, and it's just awful.
Yeah, I'm the same way. Yeah. I think it's your adrenaline building up and sort of survival mode kicking in, and then it all releases, and you're like,
yeah.
Well,
and if you're like me, you start eating like garbage when you have rehearsals, and you're like running from one place to the other and living off Taco Bell. It's not a good thing.
Mm-hmm. For me, it's not what I'm eating, it's how infrequently I'm eating and the weird hours at which I'm doing it. Like I'll often, like dinner will be at like 10:30 after rehearsal, or I'm like, I'm drinking coffee in the morning, but I'm not quite hungry yet. But then because of what I have to do for the show, this happened when I did Romeo and Juliet, because I produced it as well. I would be out like running errands all morning, getting props, finding costumes, communicating with our venue representatives. And then it would be like 1 p.m. and I'd realize like I was just on caffeine, but there were no calories in my body. So I was like getting jitters because I hadn't eaten food in all of that time. And so it can really throw off your body clock, your food clock. But you don't notice it, or even if you notice it, there's no like immediate solution. You just kind of keep going because you are in survival mode. And then you get to the end of it, and well, I don't know about you, Jessie. I often find that when I finish a show, I'm like starving. I'm like, I need food now because I like was not eating consistently enough when we were in the process.
Thankfully, I have learned for myself several years ago that skipping meals or having meals at weird times makes me a really horrible human being. Like
that's hard to imagine. You're such a lovely human.
Yeah, I'm not if I haven't eaten. I'm a nightmare. Joel can tell you there have been family vacations we've gone with his family where they have like debated so long about where to eat, or they've pushed dinner off because of XYZ, and we finally get at a table at 7 p.m. or 8 p.m. and I'm like, She-Hulk over here. Like, thankfully I'm very quiet about it, but yeah, if it's just Joel, especially, it's not pretty. So I don't think I find myself starving, but I am starving for like vegetables. And I'm like, my stomach is like, I've had all this meat, because most fast food is meat, and I actually usually don't eat a lot of meat, typically, especially not processed meats. So yeah, it's like a detox that happens afterwards for me.
Detox is a really good word. It's so funny. Before I even remembered that Hangovers was our subject of today's cocktail hour, I actually texted my stage manager early this morning, and I told her, I was like, I have an emotional hangover from this weekend. Like I like woke up. I woke up almost in tears. Just imagining what had happened the night before and the night before that. So this past weekend, I kicked off our 10-week stratagem project, which is it's an audio drama extravaganza that we are doing with the help of Dr. Misty Anderson, Dr. Donna Waldron, and the R18 Collective. We're working more closely with them on this one than on any of the previous DRS projects. And we're doing George Farquhar's late Restoration comedy, The Beaux Stratagem, and Hannah Cooley's late 18th century American Revolution era Belle's Stratagem. And I really radically reworked the scripts for both for our company of actors. I am acting in both. And my team and I have been prepping for this hardcore for like 4 months. I cast the first person 4.5 months ago. So this has been a long time coming. And we read The Beaux Stratagem for the first time on Saturday night and Belle's Stratagem for the first time last night. And and we recorded both sessions so that our understudies are going to be able to watch them and just know what we're working on. And I watched them after they were uploaded before I went to bed last night, and I woke up in tears just like thinking about moments, because I had been dreaming about it for so long, and to have it finally be happening was just like extraordinary. And I wasn't even processing it at the time because I was acting in it, and it was like the writer director in me took until this morning to like really process what had just happened. But the Bells stratagem, I basically reworked the ending so that it really does read like a farewell, like an emotional farewell for the characters. And it's the end of the digital restoration series. When we do that Zoom performance, that's going to be the end of this season of it. And my two actors who are playing the leads have been with me for so many months, and they knew that it was going to be the end. And both of them teared up doing it last night. You know, both guys, they were just like really feeling it, because I think they could sort of see into the future and see 10 weeks forward. Like, wow, when we do this for an audience, it actually is going to be goodbye. We're not going to be seeing each other 15 hours a week consistently, you know, every month. So there's like a pre-nostalgia that I'm having right now, which is, I think, a little bit of it's an emotional hangover that like hasn't quite fully manifested yet, and probably won't until the project is over. But I sort of, I don't know, in my mind I like pitched forward, and I was like, wow, yeah, when we get to the end of this, there is going to be a sigh of relief that is going to like rack my body. And it's going to be really, it's going to be sad. It's going to be beautiful and lovely and so like affirming, but it's going to be really sad at the same time. So it's such a funny thing we do as theater artists. Like we like set ourselves up to mourn things. Sometimes that's how it feels.
We're a little dramatic bunch,
yes,
I think.
Yeah, we are.
Yeah, I think, well, that's one of the things I love about the cycle of sort of that creates hangovers is the sort of the creation becomes destruction, becomes creation, that cycle. And I don't know that, I mean, human beings experience that stuff in the seasons and other things. I mean, like it's all over the place, that cycle. But I think theater is one that does it pretty intentionally, unlike a lot of other places, you know. Yeah. I mean, I think like if they could, the NFL would just run nonstop, you know. If it made sense and like they could make the finances work, I think they would run it sort of endlessly. And there is some kind of theater that like it has sort of that cycle for the individual, like the really successful Broadway stuff with huge runs, like individuals sort of die out of that story, not literally, but they cycle out of that story. But the show does not have a death, or at least for a very, very long time, you know? So, I just, you know, those of us are sort of in the average place, regional theaters, small theaters, we sort of do it, it's a kind of discipline, in the capital D sense. And, you know, I like it, but it's hard. It's a hard ask. I mean, these people deal with sort of corporate death on a really regular basis. They invite it into their lives, and that's a challenging and traumatizing thing to do as a human being. Lots of other people avoid it, you know.
Yeah, and often, like, I find that part of a post-show hangover for me is recognizing how transformative the piece was, or how meaningful it was to me. So as I agree with both of you that not every show is the special show. Not every show gets in to your bloodstream the way others do. But when you have those shows, sometimes for me, I'm so wrapped up in doing it in the moment as it's unfolding that I'm not processing how deeply I have actually been touched, or how moved I really am. Like, my body knows it, but I don't, because I'm too focused on like continuing to do the work. And then the show ends, and it's like in that moment of reflection, of retrospection, that I'm like, oh wow, that one really got to me.
Yeah. And I think for me, a lot of times too, sometimes it's the text or the production, but a lot of times it's just the relationships that are formed, which is really weird for me as an introvert. But yeah, we still need relationships. We may not look like we need them, but those are the special ones, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, when you find yourself missing the people, just missing seeing them consistently.
Yeah.
Yeah. What are shows that you've had it from, that you've had that real, like, that was a special one, that moved me, I'm gonna have to really work to let that one go?
I have a small handful that come to mind. I think for me, it's much easier to identify what those shows are if I'm directing. I can just sort of see it, and things gel or they don't, and I can detect it earlier. If I'm an actor, it usually is weeks and months and sometimes years later, like, oh, that one's pretty good. And the one that has stuck with me the longest was Henry V at Cape Fear Regional Theater here in town. I was sort of the part-time chorus and the dramaturg for the production. The artistic director of the theater at the time, Tom Quaintance, was the other half of the chorus, and so we sort of tag teamed. And that one, it was sort of like all-star cast. The other artistic director of the other theater in town, Robin Parrish, was in it. There were a lot of like former Sweet Tea actors and even folks from American Shakespeare Center who just like auditioned on a whim and came down and they were in it, and it was cool. It was a good production. I was working on it with a colleague at FSU who designed the set. That was cool. As an actor, that's probably the one I have remembered the longest, along with a fabulous turn I did in Spamalot, also at Cape Fear Regional Theater. A couple years before that, had fun there.
Who'd you
fun
play?
Playing Cardinal. Say what?
Who'd you play in Spamalot?
Robin and Brother Maynard, which was fantastic. I mean, like, we cracked each other up every night. It was truly delightful.
That's awesome.
And I played Cardinal Richelieu in Three Musketeers there as well, and that was pretty fun. As a director, the ones that have stuck with me the longest have been the Honest Pint Hamlet that I did a few years back, and both times we did actually The Tempest. Yeah, those have been good.
Let's see. For me, I know in high school, Tom Sawyer, the musical, was a big one. And I think part of that just had to do with the age, because I was in like 8th grade and it was largely a cast of 8th graders.
Yeah.
So that one was just really special. And some of my best friends at the time were in it, which was fun. In college, I assistant stage managed The Fantastic Mr. Fox, and that one just had such a lovely, cohesive, fun cast. Mm-hmm. I really enjoyed working with them.
Yeah.
And definitely missed that, because some of it, like, it's really fun, and I think it's kind of like what you said about it being different when you direct, when you get to watch people interact. There's something special about that, because you do get to see how people gel. Mm-hmm. There was one other one. What was the other one I was thinking? I don't know. There was another one I was thinking about, but now I've forgotten. So.
What about you, Claire?
I mean, I absolutely had it after we closed the Parkland project last summer. I spent how many months prepping for that show, and then we spent 8 weeks rehearsing it and workshopping it, because it was partially devised, so it was a long form process.
It was fun.
And the conceit of that show was they were all my actors were aged 18 to 23, so they were all college age actors, but they were playing high schoolers. And we worked with the survivors of the Parkland shooting, and the idea was that, like, a group of high schoolers were coming together a few months after a school shooting on their campus to remount their canceled production of R&J in honor of their fallen friends, some of whom were castmates. And so they're like doubling parts, like they're taking on their parts, and they're sort of emotionally working. And so their lives were sort of puncturing through their dress rehearsal of R&J. And we did it site specifically in a high school. And that was the summer when there were like 4 shootings. And so it was just I think we all sort of felt as a collective that we were working on something bigger than ourselves. We were tackling an issue that we all felt really strongly about. And we felt a real responsibility to get it right, or to just do our very, very best work. Not even as like Shakespeareans, but just like as human artists, we were like, we need to tell this as truthfully as we can. And they did such beautiful work. And closing that show, I actually went on a trip after that show because I couldn't like be in one place. I couldn't be in the same place. I needed to like new scenery, some time alone. I went by myself. I went and saw some theater. I had to like really detox after that because I missed it so much, and I had been so profoundly moved by their work. Playing Catherine in Proof, it was really hard to say goodbye to her, especially because I have a particularly close and always have had a close relationship with my dad. He's like my best friend, and the dynamism and emotional beauty of Catherine's relationship with her father in that play is just so gorgeous, and it felt so accessible to me. Ironically, it was before my dad was diagnosed with cancer. I think if I played it now, it would be very hard, or at least be very different. But it really got to me. Like, she really got under my skin, and it was hard. Like, once that show was over, I really did feel like the grief and the like, oh wait, I don't get to do that anymore. I don't get to like say those words and live in her shoes, in her world. And yeah, those are 2 that like really sort of stick in my mind. And then there are others where I just, as you said, Jessie, like I just missed the relationships. Like, we had an almost all women Hamlet that we did, and we all just became such a freaking sorority that like once the show was over, we were like, oh man, like that was the most fun we've ever had, coming to rehearsal every day and like picking up swords and doing Hamlet all women. And like the show was fine. It was a fine Hamlet, but like I just missed the people. It's so funny. I'm thinking about 2020 as like the show that I'm sure I would have mourned if we had gotten to the end was Curious Incident of the Dog in the Nighttime, but we got closed down 1 week into our 6-week run because of COVID. And Jamie Sanders, who was playing Christopher, that's how I met him, and he and I have worked together many, many times digitally since then. He and I have talked about how like we didn't know how to mourn it. We didn't even know if we were allowed to. Like, it just felt so wrong. Like there was so much growth for that show left to happen. There was so much connection with audiences left to happen, and we were just robbed of it. And I do not want to make this, I don't make this comparison lightly, and I don't want to offend anyone who's had this actual experience, but it is kind of like an artistic miscarriage what happened to shows that were running or rehearsing when everything got shut down in March. There's like an abortive feeling of like, how do we even, there's no post show for this. We're in a show, but we can't do it. I don't know. That was a new experience for me, and I think for everybody else.
Yeah, I don't like 2020 at all. I've decided the verdict has come in.
Yeah,
I sort of hate it. We're gonna see. I feel like in about 3 weeks, maybe 2020 will be sort of cleaned up. We'll see. Mm-hmm. But I'm ready. I'm ready to move on. I'm hungover from it.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. I think that's where all the naps came from.
Yeah.
And actually, I think the last time I felt this at the end of a year was 2016.
Mm-hmm. Like I think the hangover is going to continue, but I don't think it's going to be. So I can be specific. I mean, I think we're looking at like lockdowns for weeks and weeks.
Yeah.
And things like that. But and that will be painful for a lot of people. But I tend to look at it positively. It's like the thing we should have been doing all along was like drinking our water. You know what I mean? And the hangover would have been avoided. But here we are.
Right.
And so we're going to drink the water after the hangover, and hopefully
detox
between that and some well-placed vaccines, we'll be okay in a few months. But yeah, I'm ready to say goodbye for sure.
Mm-hmm. What is one thing in 2021 that you're both looking forward to?
I'm going to be an aunt again, so I'm looking forward to that.
Yay!
Yes. And I'm going to be a godmother. So I've got 2 babies coming into my life, and that's exciting.
That's really exciting. What are the due dates?
God baby is due, I can't remember exactly when, but in February. And then my niece is due on March 31st, though she will most likely be here before that because my sister's diabetic. So most likely will be early.
That is so exciting.
Yeah.
It is. That's very exciting. I think I'm most looking forward. Well, if it happens, I'm looking forward to a trip to Europe. Those fingers are crossed.
Mm-hmm.
And then second is also conditional, which is a hopeful production of Othello. So like, I'm sort of like, I'm excited about both of those things, but I'm also quite prepared.
Right.
Excited.
Yeah.
So, see how it goes. How about you?
In mid-February, I'm getting a group of actors together, and we are reading the most recently updated versions of my adaptation of War and Peace, and we are recording them, and some pretty cool people are going to have access to that recording because there has been some interest in doing them from theaters.
Very cool.
So, and just an incredible cadre of actors have said yes. Like, I'm just excited to be in a Zoom room with all of them. Some of them haven't met each other yet because they've all done different projects with me, but they're all rock stars and also just really good friends. Like, they're really wonderful collaborators. I trust them, beautiful actors, but more than that, like, I just really love them as people, and sharing your work, especially when it's writing, is such a vulnerable thing that it just, I'm so happy because I feel like the plays are like safe with them, and they're gonna illuminate things that I haven't even realized. They're gonna show me things I haven't discovered yet, and yeah, that's happening in about 6 weeks, and I'm really excited about it. And then all of the art that I hope we are able to make. I'm looking forward to all of the things that I want to happen for Sweet Tea's programming. I want your Othello to happen. Fingers crossed.
We may have like a vaccine only production of Othello. If you got your shots, you can be in it. We'll see how that goes. In North Carolina, theoretically, people like me will start getting vaccines next Monday. I sort of doubt it, but like, we're on the schedule.
Okay.
So that's good. I think I'm technically essential, but like appropriately way down behind like the senior citizens and the actual, like the first responders and things like that. Because I work for a public institution.
Right.
I will be on the list shortly thereafter. So if they get it out, maybe it'll be me doing a very heavily doubled production of Othello, where I just play all the parts.
Yeah, that'd be fun.
Like finger puppets.
One man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll see how it goes.
I have a puppet. Well, I don't have it, but my mom has a lot of puppets and a puppet theater thing that's like this big. So
okay,
if we need to pull that out,
there's your backup plan. Yeah, Jessie's mom's puppet theater.
Like I think it'll work.
I think it will too. So we're back. We're doing cocktail hours every Monday. Check in. We're going to be convening and chatting about things that we love and drinking, which we also love. Hangovers aside. Thanks for joining us today. Have an awesome rest of your week, friends.
Ta-ta.
Bye.
Happy New Year.